So I happen to work with multiple bosses and um, in academics, right? And in my initial days, I had a boss who was superb in administration, right? And he had a lot of administration skill, but not all that great when it comes to academic delivery, right? And academic performance was not great, and human side of it is also not great. He's not empathetic and all that, but administration superb, right? And I used to admire him for the administrative skill. And then subsequently, I had another boss who joined us from a big academic institute, and he was a hardcore academician, and he was a great performer in academics. I used to admire him a lot for that, thinking that I should also be like him, right? I should teach like him, research like him. And he's a fabulous corporate trainer, right? I used to sit through his classes and trainings and understand how to handle a lot of learning. But he was a terrible administrator, right? And he cannot get into details, he cannot keep a team with him, and he was also very terrible when it comes to human skills, right? And interpersonal skill was very, very bad. Then later, now I joined institute which is managed by Jesuits, right? And since they all come from the priest background, their human skill is extremely good, right? And they are very empathetic. And in fact, I always think like they are more empathetic than required, right? They are so empathetic. But I don't really admire their administration part of it or academic skills and all that, but they are excellent human beings and very empathetic. So if I wanted to hire a boss, I would like to hire someone who is well balanced with all these three, right? And he can be a better boss. That's what I always think. But I think it's very difficult to find a person who has a good balance of all these three. Uh, Something like whenever somebody, for example, when something is expected out of me, right, from a job perspective or something, I always evaluate like this. If the same KRA is given to my boss, will he be able to achieve this? Right? I measure always like this, right? And I keep on asking. So if he expects so and so KRA from me, and whether he would have fulfilled this, and was he having a track record of fulfilling this? I keep on asking this, right? Sometime, I mean, this is the way how I evaluate my boss. So I would like to have a boss who far exceeds on all these three, and he will be the one who I would like to hire.
So at least my perspective on this, I mean, I've had a few bosses through my career. And I think for me, there are two or three qualities that have stood out very well, which have helped in my own professional growth. One is, I think, a boss who would set very stretch goals, but who I always knew had my back. So he would really stretch me. He would try and get the best out of me, but I knew that, there would be zero penalty for taking risks, and he had my back. Um, the second thing that I would say is the ability to roll up the sleeves and not only give gyan on what's the vision and what's the road we need to run on, but the willingness to run with you on that road. Again, I think that's the second thing that would stand out from a quality standpoint. And I think the third thing, which again is a human factor, is a genuine interest in making you successful. You can feel that the guy is doing what he's doing, and he is genuinely interested in making your career successful in the organization. And therefore, all the right things are happening. And at least I try and emulate these three in whatever I do. But to me, these are core values, whether it's Gen Z or it is Gen Z plus. If some of these things are there, I mean, they will all find they would all find value in a boss who is exhibiting some of these traits, I would say. And coming back to hiring my own boss, I sort of agree with what Sachinandan said, that it's a bit of an oxymoron, especially if you want to hire someone you can't hire your ex-boss as your subordinate in the corporate world for sure. It's going to be very hard for him, and it may be a little hard for you to hire him as your boss as well, unless he was like super duper senior. I don't know.
Best leaders are those who are very confident of their own self, and then they let others grow, because they know that they are so capable that if others would grow, they will push them upward and they will do better. Majority of the people, and sorry to state that, reach in position of authority not because necessarily because of their capability. It's a time and luck factor, right? So the time and luck factor, when you put you in a place of authority, you have become insecure, and that doesn't allow you to grow your own people, right? So this whole big problem in the corporate world is, अब मैंने काम किया, क्रेडिट बॉस ले गया, बट वो होता इसीलिए क्योंकि बॉस इनसिक्योर होता है, उसको अपने बॉस को जाके बताना होता है कि मैं कर रहा हूं सारा काम. Best bosses would say, sir, I have done nothing. I तो even don't need to know. This guy is so superior. राइट, बट वो उनको लगता है मेरा बॉस भी बेवकूफ है, मैं भी बेवकूफ हूँ, नीचे वाला काम करेगा तो फिर ऐसा नहीं हो मेरे बॉस को पता लग जाए ये बात. बट बेस्ट बॉसेस वुड से, आई हैव डन नथिंग, लुक एट दिस टीम, दिस इज फैबुलस, they are doing that. But that's very rare commodities, and those commodities actually grow in leadership.
And I tell you that the ego quotient of the boss, you can make out a boss who is insecure, highly on ego, versus those who are free play like a free bird. They are letting go, they are allowing the credit, they are okay to make themselves redundant to take on a new responsibilities. The core value system has to be strong. They become pure hearted, and people can see through it. Otherwise, how much you can talk about in English, but people can see through your eyes how much you genuinely care about employee interests, or how much you do not.
Yeah, but one of the thing like which professor also brought about, like probably you would have been a very difficult employee, quite honestly, professor. I mean, having so much high expectation of your boss, right? That my KRS should be superseded by your KRS. I mean, that's a nightmare for a boss, right? Possibly. But just I think it's a very fair comment, because that's one of the challenges which, if you look at from a boss perspective, right? He has to supersede, or at least perceived to be superseded in all aspects of what you do as an employee, as a team member. You also said the same thing, right? And when you said that probably if given a chance, will you hire your own boss? I would say that genuine team members do that. I mean, if you have a weakness, if you know that I would be complimented by my boss capabilities or qualities, I would hire. I think there are examples in history, though I think they are debatable, like Apple, right? John Scully was hired by Steve, right? That backfired, but he knew that he is not a marketer. He is more of a designer, a guy, but then he needs a marketer to sell. So I think given a chance, I can't say about the current boss or the previous bosses, but yes, if I know that a boss is going to compliment me and probably help me grow my career and my team's career, I would definitely want to hire him again.
अगर आप इस पोजीशन में पहुंच गए कि आप अपने बॉस को हायर करने की क्षमता है, तो आप नहीं करेंगे उसको. हाँ.
Like that, it's highlighting what qualities we look for. Likewise, the question for us to reflect: would our team hire us as their boss?
You simply look at it, and I would say I've hired my own boss in the way that I've changed an organization and joined the same boss. So I have hired him back as a boss, right?
Yeah.
I have made that choice of saying that, here is an individual I would like to work with. He was my boss, and I've changed an organization to work with that gentleman again. So I very much hired him as my boss again, right? And because that it was as much his choice as it was mine to make in that situation. So I think I would say that that definitely, I agree with, I think Ashish is all of the points that you were making, and I was thinking about three. And I think the two pieces I'll add. One is that, given that I've spent my life in consulting, it's an apprenticeship business, right? So you will be a reflection of your boss very much, right? You can't get away from that. It is a business of taught as a craft and a skill top to bottom. So it is not something that, so you will do things as you have been taught to do things, and that will be because of people in a certain manner, and therefore it will reflect. And number two, I think, is the point of saying that I think at actually a fair number of stages in your career, even though you're not an entrepreneur or you may not be, you can very much say I'm my own boss, and that determination, because you're answerable to yourself first, and therefore the question comes of saying that if I'm my own boss and I have my own accountability and doing, then everything around me, including my boss, has to complement what I am doing to try to succeed. Is that complementary to the vision? Is that complementary to my success and therefore his success? Or he says that, I think that is of saying that ultimately, especially at a senior level, you are accountable for doing what you're doing, right? There is a
I think very much, kind of aligned with the thinking which Anurag just shared on that, because I think it's a function of, saying that, are you starting in your journey? When you're starting in a journey, then you're looking for hard skills, you're looking for that professional, thing to happen there and that. As you kind of move to senior roles around it, it's not an adversarial relationship. It's pretty much, we are working together, making the magic happen on it. And I know that I'm not perfect, and I know my boss is not perfect. So how do we complement each other, come back in such a way that and if I'm part of a team, if I'm working with the CEO is looking at the organization, then we are part of the team to kind of, make that success happen for the organization. So it's kind of quite natural to say that knowing your boss well is your task, is your important area of activity, to say that I would propose thoughts and suggestions such a way that they do get accepted. Also look at, where he or she would fall short, and say that, okay, how do I complement that, so that the things happen and we together create a magic. And that's where the longer tenures of people do happen, in the organizations. And like you gave an example of, moving to another organization with a boss as well. That's something which we see so many times happening. And I never thought of it like as hiring your own boss, but it's definitely a very complementarity thing which happens because of the fact that the team's working. It's creating the magic, it's creating that success happen, and it's not an individual success. It is a collective success. In certain cases, it could be variation that, that there was some weakness, let's say I had so much that my boss is kind of compensating it so much that I want to go for him only. That can be the situation as well in certain cases on it. But largely, I would believe that as we kind of go up in more senior roles, it does become a complementing kind of a relationship. And if you carrying adversarial thoughts there, it would actually create challenges. And the further growth would certainly get inhibited in certain sense around it. And that is something which links to what you said also, being your own boss. So
one only difference, sorry, just I'll take 1 minute. I think so. What is happening, the role, as you rightly said, the role of bosses have dramatically changed. So I remember in my current journey, I had a head of strategy, young, very, very sharp guy, wife, which was a lawyer at a very big law firm. Both of them working day and night, 18 hours. And I obviously, I put my father's hat, and they were young. And one day, both of them came to my office, they were chatting. And I asked very honestly, with full honest intention, I said, now why you're not expanding your family? Two of you have been married for, almost 10 years. So they said, we have a dog. And they just, it went silent. The point is saying, this is none of your business. Yeah. So please, please stay away from my space. You are good to me. I'm good to you. I'm doing your job. That's it. It's none of your space. And that was an opening that, look, now, in my past, my first or two job, if my boss would have asked, I said, kitna acha hai na? Dekho mere ghar, bachcho, dwar, sabke bare mein soch raha hai. Now it has changed completely.